Hello, good afternoon. The Prince of Wales has tested positive for the coronavirus. Clarence House says that Prince Charles, who's 71, is displaying mild symptoms but is otherwise in good health. The Duchess of Cornwall has also been tested but doesn't have the virus. Buckingham Palace says the Prince last saw the Queen nearly 2 weeks ago and that Her Majesty is also in good health. In some of today's other developments, the Chancellor is to unveil a package of measures tomorrow aimed at helping the 5 million self-employed people who've been affected by coronavirus. Nearly 500,000 people have applied for universal credit in the last 9 days as people turn to the benefit system to keep families afloat during the outbreak. An appeal launched yesterday for 250,000 people to help the NHS through the crisis has already exceeded its target. The volunteers are needed for delivering food and medicines to people's homes and driving patients to appointments. Spain has registered 738 fatalities in the past 24 hours, the country's steepest increase since the outbreak. The country's death toll now stands at 3,434, surpassing the number of coronavirus fatalities in China. Well, our first report is from our correspondent, Richard Galpin.
The 71-year-old prince, who has a busy schedule, had his last public engagement on March the 12th, when a palace source said he also saw the Queen. It's understood he became contagious the following day, and after then he'd had a small number of meetings. He and the Duchess of Cornwall are currently in Balmoral in Scotland and are both self-isolating. He tested positive on Monday after showing mild symptoms, but it's thought unlikely it'll escalate into a more serious case. Meanwhile, the NHS appeal yesterday afternoon for a volunteer army has been hugely successful. By 9:45 this morning, they had more than they'd asked for. 252,000 people had joined up.
In times like this, as the Chief Medical Officer has already said, we see outbreaks of altruism, people wanting to help. So it's a wonderful response in the same way that all those doctors coming back, nurses saying they'll come back. I'm bowled over by it.
The volunteers' role is to help the most vulnerable people in the country who have to remain at home for 12 weeks to avoid being infected by coronavirus.
The call for 250,000 volunteers is looking to help people with their shopping, with transport. If they have a DBS qualification, then they can help with patient transport. And I understand, of course, that the black cab drivers, especially in London, are hoping to be mobilised in that respect because their vehicles are more secure. And then also simply, if you like, calling on isolated people, making a phone call, keeping people in touch.
Proving less successful is the government's decision to allow construction workers to keep working to help the economy. But several firms say they're closing. It's extremely difficult to adhere to the government advice for workers to keep 2 metres apart from each other. In Scotland, construction's being halted. In Westminster, there's still no change.
In the construction industry in particular, a number of employers have concluded that they can't follow the Public Health England guidance and are choosing to close down their sites. In some cases they're doing so over a short period of time, so those sites remain safe, and that's the right thing to do. But if you or your employer believe that you can continue to operate safely within those guidelines, then it's sensible for you to do so.
But there are, of course, exceptions for critical buildings, like the one underway to transform this, the Excel Conference Centre in London, into a hospital. It's due to be up and running by next week. 2 wards with 2,000 beds in each is to be named the Nightingale Hospital. This broad-ranging series of initiatives in recent weeks leading some experts to be more hopeful the NHS will be able to cope as the infection rate surges and then peaks in 2.5 weeks' time.
Mr. Speaker,
In Westminster today, this is the last question time before Parliament, like so many other institutions, is expected to close its doors for several weeks.
thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
But before the MPs here start working from home, it's thought they'll pass a set of emergency laws to tackle the coronavirus crisis. And those laws include giving the police extra powers.
Can you all go home, please? It's not a holiday.
government believes keeping people inside their homes is one of the most effective ways of slowing the spread of the deadly virus. Richard Galpin, BBC News.
Well, let's go back to that news that the Prince of Wales has tested positive for coronavirus. Our Royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell is here with me. Nicholas, what else do we know about this?
Mild symptoms, according to Clarence House. The NHS in Scotland is at pains to point out that he qualified for a test purely on clinical grounds as somebody over 70 who was exhibiting the symptoms. We know that he and the Duchess of Cornwall travelled up to Scotland on Sunday. They flew up, not on a scheduled flight, I presume on an RAF flight. Some symptoms must by then have been exhibiting, but I think that they were indistinct. They were more pronounced on Monday, so they were both tested on Monday evening by the NHS. The results came through late last night. His were positive, hers were negative. So they are both now self-isolating at his house on the Balmoral estate, that's Birkhall, which is quite a large building, certainly plenty of space for them to self-isolate. We're told that he is continuing to work. He is in good spirits, so we're told he's up and about. Now, importantly, he last saw the Queen on the 12th of March. The Prince of Wales was at Buckingham Palace that day for an investiture. They had a brief meeting. The royal family had been together prior to that, a couple of days, at the Commonwealth Day service at Westminster Abbey, when of course they were there en masse with the Cambridges and the Sussex is as well. But Buckingham Palace, which is normally rather sparing in the information that it gives about the health of senior members of the royal family, has been very quick to say that the Queen is in good health. She, of course, is at Windsor. She went there last week, a week earlier than had been planned. She is there with the Duke of Edinburgh. In everyone's minds, clearly, is the fact that she is a month away from being 94, he is 98. But we are told that she, and presumably the Duke of Edinburgh as well, are following all the appropriate governmental advice about staying well.
Okay, Nick, many thanks. Our Royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell there. The Chancellor is to unveil a package of measures tomorrow to help the estimated 5 million people in the UK who are self-employed after criticism that they've been left with no financial support to get them through the coronavirus crisis. As our Consumer Affairs correspondent Sarah Corker reports, the delay is already causing real hardship.
I'm Ronnie Pennycook. I am a relatively small roofing contractor in Edinburgh for my sins. I'm a sole trader, self-employed.
My name is Selina and I work as a freelance consultant for fashion brands.
From roofers to hairdressers to taxi drivers, the UK's 5 million self